Let's get this out of the way. I hate rom-coms. Out of the tens of hundreds I've seen, I've only ever enjoyed 1% of them. There's just something about them that makes it absolutely boring to me. It could be the predictable scenarios, the dragged out stories, or the one-dimensional characters. Or it could just be all of them in one. There's this one guy though, this one mangaka, who time and time again has impressed me with how he handles rom-coms. Hell, he even made my favorite manga of all time, which I made a video on and you should definitely check out. Today though, we'll be talking about his best rom-com, and I'd even go as far as calling it the greatest rom-com ever made, as well as one of the greatest mangas ever made. It's called Chikan Otoko, and it's unbelievably good. Chikan Otoko, or Molester Man, yes I know, weird ass name, is a manga based off a 2chan thread from 2004. Its title is sort of a parody on the widely popular Densha Otoku, otherwise known as Train Man, which I'm sure people who've gone through all the mangas and Japanese shows from the 2000s are familiar with. It's a story about an otaku who helps a beautiful woman on a train from sexual harassment. He also posts his journey on a 2chan thread, seeking help on how to get closer to this woman. This manga is quite a nice read and is short as well, so I recommend it. Chikan Otoko is similar in this vein, where it's an otaku who posts his love life on 2chan, asking for help. In this case though, our protagonist doesn't pull off a heroic act, he accidentally gets convicted as a molester. The introduction to our protagonist is a great one. We just get thrown into this story. No 5-page exposition, we get told the date and that our protagonist is going home from work. He sees a pretty girl who's panicking, and he starts running because of the rain. He sees the girl looking at him with a scared face, and he comes to the conclusion that a stalker appeared and starts running faster to help her. But he soon comes to another conclusion. He's the stalker. He gets a hold of her and tries to calm her down, but she keeps crying. And then he gets arrested. That's the introduction we get. That's our first impression of our protagonist. Just a note as well, we don't get told these characters' real names. The names that we get are ones that Molester Man uses in the 2chan thread. This is honestly a greater move than the author coming up with actual names. It makes it feel like the story is being told to us directly from Molester Man on the 2chan thread, making the reader feel like one of the onlookers of the thread. It's just a nice touch that adds to the authenticity of the story. Anyways, we soon find out that this girl is actually a victim of previous stalking. From there we see Molester Man get closer to the girl and her group of friends. That's essentially the first half of the story in a nutshell. The great thing about this manga and the character Molester Man is how real he feels. We get his internal thoughts as well as dialogue between him and the other characters. He's a very quiet and nervous character, in person that is. In his thoughts he's loud, crude, cynical, and all over the place. This is what makes him feel so real. I'm sure not very many people actually say how they feel or think about something. In person they could be a loud and brash person, but in their thoughts they're actually pretty nervous and are only acting a certain way outwardly due to others' expectations or self-expectation. Molester Man is great in this way. He also makes references to other manga and media every couple pages, which adds to the humor. They aren't just thrown in there for the sake of being references, but they're used within Molester Man's thoughts during a moment where he thinks back to a certain series. One of the first references in this is on the first chapter. It's a reference to Bushiroad from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5, and it's still so funny that it gets me. There are many more references like this spread around the manga that are just hilarious, ones from Doraemon, Bleach, and so on. Moving on, during the first half of the manga, we get to see Molester Man getting close to Misunderstanding and her group of friends, and trying to get her to go on a date with him. The other characters in the group are co-workers of Misunderstandings. The two important ones are Kansai and Lollyjugs. That's such a fucking stupid name. Anyways, we see Molester Man trying his best to get closer with the enigmatic Misunderstanding, who's a girl that he just does not understand at all, which makes her character name pretty ironic. Molester Man eventually becomes formally acquainted with Lollyjugs and, of course, Kansai. Yeah! So we see our protagonist become actual friends with Lollyjugs and Kansai in a really natural way. Lollyjugs is one of those cutesy characters who's actually a massive nerd and loves Dragon Quest. And Kansai is an open and tomboyish girl who is kind of honestly the greatest waifu ever. We see Molester Man kind of clash with Kansai in his mind, that is, with these insane reactions in his thoughts to Kansai just talking normally. It's so goddamn hilarious. But he eventually grows to become really good friends with Kansai, and the story starts shifting focus from misunderstanding to Kansai. And that's when you start to realize, wait, Kansai's the heroine? Yeah, it's such a great turnaround, and it's done so smoothly. We see Molester Man naturally grow to like Kansai more and more, and he himself focuses less and less on misunderstanding. And since this is told from his perspective on a 2chan thread, it feels all the more natural. Speaking of the 2chan thread, it has some hilarious moments to them. This 2chan forum is called The Vipers, a notoriously bad forum, and we see that. There's a bunch of trolls, dumbasses, and just basically what Twitter has become now. But there are those people who genuinely try to help Molester Man, and they stick around the longest. We get to see this great side to the forum, and it's quite nice. And of course, they're also really funny. Anyways, we see the group bantering on and on about the most trivial things, but it's really nice. We see the nervous and quiet version of Molester Man disappear, and is more honest with his thoughts when speaking to Kansai. They feel like real friends. And of course, we also see frequent encounters with lollyjugs and misunderstanding. We also get frequent gags with other smaller characters. Everything just feels right. Life is trivial and uneventful, but still immensely fun. I really enjoy these more slice-of-life chapters. Things start to get a little complicated though. The story becomes more drama-focused at this point. Molester Man very obviously has a crush on Kansai, but Lollyjugs has a crush on Molester Man. She tries making very obvious moves, to the point of telling Molester Man to have sex with her, but he says no. These are really powerful few pages. Molester Man is panicking, not knowing what to do, but Molester Man thinks of Kansai at that very moment and says no to Lollyjugs. This is where the romance drama arc of the manga begins from. Things become more heated and awkward with Lollyjugs. She even confesses her feelings, but Molester Man is desperately going after Kansai. I've honestly never felt so much anxiety from just a few pages. This RomCom, which had me laughing my ass off constantly, suddenly makes me feel all this dread. It's kind of amazing how it's pulled off. We learn so much about these characters that these moments just make your heart pound and ache. We get to see a more pathetic side of Molester Man, and what was a very solid group of friends started to break apart because of this rejection. Now Molester Man was left with two real choices: stay friends with Kansai forever, or ask her out and see where that goes. Either way, Molester Man wanted to get closer with Kansai. That much is obvious, and that's what he did. Even with all this intensity, we got comedic moments from the gag characters that are just hilarious. Kansai eventually asks Molester about the situation with Lollyjugs, and he starts panicking. We see Molester desperately trying to ask Kansai out, but she keeps shouting at him because of the lolly situation. And then he finally did it. He told Kansai that he likes her. The build-up was kind of insane. Everything was riding on this moment. Of course, Kansai didn't respond straight away, they just went home, and then the greatest character in the manga appeared. Molester Man's Onehole, Sachiko. Sachiko is actually a really well utilized character. Okay, hear me out guys. It sounds weird, but I swear it ain't. Ready? Okay. Basically, Kansai stops contacting Molester for a bit, and Sachiko, the Onehole, is there to show how he's at his lowest point. He uses her as a way to feel something. As much of a gag as this is, it's kind of depressing really. Eventually though, Kansai contacts Molester Man, and he tells her to think about her reply, and to tell him on Christmas. Kansai very obviously likes Molester, but doesn't say anything because of how loyal she is to Lollyjugs. We finally get closure for the stalker problem with misunderstanding during this break period, and we also see Molester on the verge of having a heart attack waiting for Christmas. But during the break, Molester gives Kansai a call. He honestly couldn't wait anymore, and she tells him that she does have feelings for him. When he goes to her house and they do the deed, he gets up and sees a photo of Kansai, Lollyjugs, and misunderstanding, all smiling happily. We can see the pain in Molester's face after seeing that. We can tell that he blames himself for what happened between them. Kansai tells Molester that she'll tell her answer when she settled matters with Lolly. And when Kansai approaches Lollyjugs, we can see how low she's fallen. Kansai tells him she's busy on Christmas, and we get a very sad photo with Sachiko. After this, Molester Man himself decides to deal with Lollyjugs. Here we can see Molester Man at his most mature. He tells Lollyjugs to make up with Kansai and that he'll stop bothering them. He knows he's been selfish and that he needs to put an end to it, and so he tells himself, it's all over now. We see a bitter but content smile on Molester Man's face, and so that's it. That's how the manga ended. Nah, I'm just playing with you. Lollyjugs and Kansai make up, and she officially confesses to Molester Man. We see our characters all finally happy again, together again. It's a really sweet moment that puts a huge smile on my face. It's honestly one of the best endings to a story I've seen. And that's it. That's the story of a dumb university student and his pursuit of love. Featuring 2chan, of course. Chikan Otoko is really something else. It has an interesting array of characters, fun situations, brilliant uses of references, hilarious gags, a nice art style, and a story that made me feel a whirlpool of emotions. I loved every moment of this manga, and I've reread it countless times. Oh yeah, I want to talk about the gag characters real quick, and the epilogue. As I've mentioned, this manga has a great assortment of gag characters. We have the manager, the sushi boys, and of course the council of molester men. They all come in at the end for this epilogue which ranks all the characters, and it gives some last few laughs before we have to say farewell to these characters. But yeah, that's Molester Man and why I love it so much, and I'm sure it'll stay that way for many, many years to come.